What's up, lads, and welcome back to the Set 8P podcast. Today, I'm going to be doing my second team breakdown, and I thought, what better team to do than one of the most surprising teams last season, the Buffalo Bills. So, before we break down this year's roster, this year's, season, how it's gone, and what they can do in the future, I thought, why not, go back in time and look at the Buffalo Bills' history. Although they weren't really proper contenders, in their early days from the 60s to the 70s, they did have a few legends that played for them. One man, you guys will already know, even if you're not an NFL fan, drafted in 1969, first overall, O.J. Simpson. We all know what he's done recently, and it's obviously terrible. He's not a great guy, but regardless, he was a great running back, one of the best to ever do it. And I guess it's a shame that he had to end his career or just go away as busy as he did. But this is a sports podcast, not a little crime podcast. We're gonna, stay away from that and moving on to some more Bills history. We can talk about how great Jim Kelly was and players like Bruce Smith in those eras, how good they were. But again, I'll get onto them later. But what I want to talk about now is they went to 4 consecutive Super Bowls in the 90s. They didn't win 4, they didn't win 3, didn't win 2, didn't even win 1. They lost 4 consecutive Super Bowls, which is appalling. The worst consecutive. No one's really, was the first time anyway anyone's made the Super Bowl 4 times in a row. And the fact they didn't even win it once was just such a disappointment. And really, the Bills franchise, really should be having at least 1 Super Bowl in their trophy cabinet by now, because really, you've got to be winning one of them. They were one of the best teams in the AFC. I mean, showing that, how they made the Super Bowl 4 years in a row. But again, just complete bottle jobs. A bit like Tottenham in the Premier League, as you can see, just the complete bottle jobs in the 90s. But yeah, it's just really disappointing. And then moving on to the 2000s, with the likes of legends like Bruce Smith, Thurman Thomas, Jim Kelly all leaving. Your team was just went on one of the 17-year playoff drought, never really contended for it. But that all ended in 2017 when Tyrod Taylor, a fairly average quarterback, had a few good years, mainly for the Bills, now a backup for the LA Chargers, managed to take a pretty average team to the playoffs, which is so good to see. Squeezing in the last day, the Cincinnati Bengals upsetting the Ravens on the last day to get them into the playoffs, which is so good to see. And I guess ever since 2017, 2018 was another bad year, but you ended up, in fact, trading up in the 2018 draft to take your future guy, Josh Allen. We'll get into him later. So the year before last, the Bills hired their head coach, Sean McDermott, and he really turned around this team. No one really expected them to make the playoffs. They had a pretty average team for most of the 2010s. As I said, they made the playoffs in 2017, but again, that was a pretty average team. And Sean McDermott coming in, no one expected a lot, and they managed to make the playoffs with a 10-6 record, coming second in their division. Unfortunately, falling short to the Texans in the first round of the playoffs. But again, Josh Allen, inexperienced in the playoffs, kind of showed that, of his incompetence, making many costly mistakes. And after that game, people were questioning, can he do it? I mean, even me, I was kind of saying, I know he's young, but again, if he's making those mistakes and, being so inaccurate as he is, can he be, a top 5 and an elite quarterback? And I guess this year he's proved all of us wrong. And I guess the Bills team in general has also proved more people wrong. I know they were even underrated before the 2019 season and the 2020 season, and they managed to go to another height, finishing 13-3, winning their division for the first time in God knows how long, at least 20 years. The Patriots were on top the whole of the 2000s and 2010s. It's hard to have a team like the Patriots in your division. So due to their record and their great division win, they ended up actually coming second in the seedings, and that meant that they got to face the Indianapolis Colts in the first round at home. They won that pretty close to the end, but again, great performance, and a home at the Baltimore Ravens. Even me, I thought the Ravens would win, but it was just, the Bills came out and just showed up at home. And unfortunately, in the AFC Championship game, one game before the Super Bowl, they just fell short to the Chiefs. Had a good start to the game, but again, the Kansas City Chiefs and Mahomes is too good. probably the closest team to, be able to stop the Chiefs. But again, they fell too short. The Chiefs are too good. That's all I got to say about them. So, for those of you who don't know, the quarterback for the Buffalo Bills is Josh Allen for me. If there was a most improved player like there is in the NBA every year, it would have to go to Josh Allen for me this year. The thing is with Josh Allen, he's already had a cannon for an arm. He's always, been known for that. He threw like 82 yards, I want to say 87 yards in his pro day. So he's known for, having the strongest arm in the NFL even before this season. The fact that he's improved his accuracy, I think he was the second most accurate quarterback in the NFL this year. Talk about completion percentage and the fact that that's not just little checkdowns. He stretched the field. Stephon Diggs is a great deep target, same with John Brown, Gabriel Davis. A lot of these receivers we'll get into later, but I feel like his receivers really do bounce off him a lot. I think that's a great connection now with Diggs. Him playing Fortnite in the off season, I think that helped a lot. Or Warzone, whatever they played, there was some form of collection bonded. Maze after that, so it was good to see. Josh Allen finishing 4th in passing yards. He got 40 passing touchdowns and I think 10 rushing touchdowns. To be honest, there were people giving him MVP shouts at the end of the season. I totally get that. I think, obviously Mahomes and Rodgers were the front runners, but that third guy had to be Josh Allen. Just at the end of the season, really improved. I think he was solid the whole season. He was very inconsistent. I mean, I was watching his worst game against the New England Patriots, but even then, he was still playing at a good level. Only had a couple bad throws, and that was it. I mean, the team in general didn't play well that game, but yeah, overall, just very, very good. Now, moving on to the running back position, which has been a very large talking point for the Bills, as their run game has been known this season to not be very strong. They rely a lot on the pass game, a lot on their receivers, and the playmaking ability of Josh Allen. But I think that might be down to, the running backs they've got kind of being lacking talented. Devin Singletary, who was a rookie last year, picked in the second round, at the end of that year, started to look like he was going to break out and become that, running back one they needed. And I thought that was going to happen. I think a lot of people were, expecting him to, break out as a top 10, top 15 running back. But he just hasn't happened. I don't think it's really been a lack of, performance from him. I think it's just the fact that he hasn't been given the carries he needs to, get up in the rushing yards, all of that, the yards per carry. I think the game plan around running hasn't been great. Their offense isn't as balanced as I like. I think, as a coach, you probably want to run it as much as possible. If you don't have to pass it, then don't. But again, if they bring in a elite talent, the running back position, that could definitely improve their running back core. Talking point for them. So they also had a rookie running back, Zach Moss, drafted in the 3rd round this year. Very interesting to see these two battle out because, Singletary was, kind of looked like he was going to cement that running back one position for the Bills for the next few years. And Zach Moss has come through. And I would argue he's probably better than Devin Singletary. I mean, he's more athletic. He's more physical. He's a more downhill runner. Singletary, has a bit more, receiving ability, a bit more speed. But Zach Moss is a bit more complete. And I think they're not quite elite. And I think the Bills do need to generally work on their running back core and their running game in general. So the question is, what do they do to fix that? So a lot of people have said to draft a running back in the 1st round. The main 2 running back prospects from this draft class are Najee Harris from Alabama, looking like a great prospect, could break out as the next star running back. And you have Travis Etienne from Clemson. The Clemson duo, Trevor Lawrence and Travis Etienne in the backfield is kind of, the Batman and the Robin of the college football season. Was just having a talented running back like Etienne to fall back on when Trevor Lawrence, isn't carrying the team, puts a bit of pressure off his back. Travis Etienne has showed that he's a very talented running back. I don't think they really have the cap space to really go for one of them big blockbuster running back free agents. I'm looking at Le'Veon Bell. I'm looking at Aaron Jones. They're the main 2 running back free agents that they could go for. But again, as I said, last season, Devin Singletary had a 4.4 yards per carry and Zach Moss having a 4.2 yards per carry, which is pretty solid. I think that shows, given both of them are young. Devin Singletary's, had a sophomore year now. Zach Moss having his rookie year now. And I think it kind of shows, especially saying their running blocking hasn't been great either. They don't have a solid offensive line. We'll get into those personnel later. But in general, the running game needs more improvement than the running core, I think, because Zach Moss and Devin Singletary, I've seen the talent they have, and I think they need to stick with them for now. So moving on to the wide receiver position, this was a very big piece of the Buffalo Bills team this year, given that they actually traded for their number one receiver this year, Stephon Diggs, traded him for a first-round pick. I think it was a great move for the Bills. As I said, has a great little connection with Josh Allen. Finished first in yards and first in receptions. Just got the ball so much for a great reason. His route running is top 3, no question, in the league. Just such a great receiver. The man next to him had a breakout year, was Cole Beasley. Now, I was saying for a while he's been underrated. And now I feel like it's been ruined because he got put in second team All-Pro, and I kind of disagree with it. But again, he deserves the credit for the season he's had. He had almost 1,000 yards this year, which is one of the best of his career. One of the best slot receivers in the NFL, just rack. One thing that's underrated about Cole Beasley is his actual contested catch ability. You'd see his size and say he's not winning them, but his contested catch percentage is one of the best in the league. Fun fact, it's better than DK Metcalf. I know all you Metcalf stands will come to me in the comments if you're even watching, but very underrated Cole Beasley. And the wide receiver 3, a lot of people before the season, and I think even now would argue that he's kind of on par with Cole Beasley, is John Brown. Now obviously he was injured for the first part of the season. When he came back was great. I feel like what's good about John Brown, he doesn't need the ball in his hands to be impactful. I feel like teams see his deep threat and kind of have to skim around him because of that, because I guess he's just so dangerous, and it means that some defensive backs will get drawn to John Brown. That kind of opens up the field for guys like Stephon Diggs and Cole Beasley. So I think it's very underrated. I think, don't underestimate the stats he's put up this year. I think, as I said, people like Cole Beasley and Diggs have kind of been stealing the spotlight because of their yards and their receptions. So John Brown definitely deserves some credit there. And then the other receiver, notable receiver on the Bills is Gabriel Davis. Now, was a rookie this year, taken the 4th, 5th round around the end of the draft. Kind of broke out, I think. And I think a lot of people are predicting him to take the next step next year. I think it's going to be hard for him, given John Brown's going to have that full year. He's going to be healthy for the start of the season. Fingers crossed nothing happens in the postseason after I said that. But, again, got all the talent to do that. But, again, it's going to be hard with, that receiver core they've already got. Moving on to tight end, which is quite weak for the Bills, actually. They have Dawson Knox, who in my opinion is very overrated. If anyone rated him anyway, I think he's under par. Not that strong, not a great blocker, has very inconsistent hands, can come up with spectacular catches. He has great athleticism, great speed for a tight end. But again, just really disappointing this year. One of the worst tight ends in PFF this year. Is you can use that as a reliable source. I do personally for most things. I don't use it all the time. I use it for other things, but I like using him. And then Tyler Kroft next to him as a tight end too. Not really used in the passing game, but again, brilliant blocker. Like, people don't really talk about him. I think he's one of the best blocking tight ends. He's a free agent this year, and I wouldn't really see him as a priority, given he's a tight end too, and they're a very replaceable position. But again, very solid this year in the blocking game. Then moving on to the O-line, which is a bit patchy, I think. I think the defensive tackles, Dion Dawkins on the left-hand side, Darrell Williams on the right-hand side, both solid, both finished top 10 in PFF grading for O-line. I know, as I said, I use PFF grades to tight ends, but I kind of use PFFs to grade O-line a lot, mainly because I guess it's hard to watch them play. There aren't really many stats you can use on them. I guess like sacks and pressures, given up, but again, PFF kind of takes that all into account anyway, and more and more detail, so I like using that. Kind of shows how great they've been. I think both gone under the radar a little bit. Dion Dawkins got paid last year, and I think Darrell Williams, I believe, is a free agent this year or next year, so it'll be a smart move to sign him on a deal. But again, the Bills' cap space is a bit messy, especially saying they're going to have to pay Josh Allen next year or this year. I predict it's going to be around 35 to 40 million. I say that's reasonable for a guy like Josh Allen. So they might not have the money. They might have to draft to tackle in the draft. I'm looking at maybe in the late first round where your pick is. I'm saying a guy like Alex Leatherwood. I think he's the one who I'd take. or the draft a cornerback or linebacker. There's a few other pieces to get, but again, I'll get into that later. And then going inside is when it really gets weak for them. So there are 2 guards this year for the majority of the season were John Feliciano and Quinton Spain. Both really names you won't really have heard of before. Both pretty inconsistent. Feliciano kind of did get better, same with Spain at the end of the season. The O-line in general was a bit stronger down the stretch, but overall very weak, very replaceable. I think what's been disappointing about it is Brian Winters, been seen as a very very good guard, came from the Jets in free agency last year, and it's been so disappointing. Literally isn't even a starter anymore, and I think that's crazy to see how much he's fell. I don't know what's happened to him, but again, I think guard is one of their biggest needs. Then going to the center, Mitch Morse, I think he's very good actually. I think he got paid last year as well, I believe. So there's a couple guys on, not Don Dawkins and him aren't really on big contracts, but they have been given their contract, for the next 3-4 years. So I'm very happy with Mitch Morse. I think he's a green light for you lot, and overall pretty solid. I'd say above average slightly, probably within 10 to 15th, that kind of range for centers. So very good at the center position. So that about wraps up the offense. Now moving on to the defense. We're going to go to the defensive line, which I think is a very interesting position for you guys. So the 2 main defensive ends are Mario Addison and Jerry Hughes. Mario Addison coming second in sacks for the team, with Jerry Hughes just edging with 7.5 sacks and Mario Addison bagging in 6. Fairly solid numbers for a defensive end, but again, as we saw in the Super Bowl, how important the defensive end position is. I actually have them drafting an edge in my mock draft 1.0. Go check out our Twitter page to have a look at that. There's a little link to the one I made, so go check that out. But again, both kind of getting up in age, and as I said, seeing in the Super Bowl how valuable pass rush is, and I think the Bills kind of getting an elite pass rusher will set them apart. I thought JJ Watt was a good move for them. It would have been, but again, moved to the Cardinals now. And not many other defensive ends really in free agency that really stand out to me. So I say draft or just stick with them. Again, both pretty solid, but could improve, I think. Overall, I'd say like a amber light, which is kind of average. And then defensive tackle, that's kind of when it gets a bit weaker. Ed Oliver was drafted last year in the first round, in the first 10 picks. Did show his promise last year. Was okay this year. Wasn't brilliant. I'd say he's average, but again, the reason he was taken in the top 10 was because he's so talented and so strong. And then next to him is a pretty unknown name, Harrison Phillips. Didn't do a lot, only had 21 tackles this year. Not brilliant. And then Justin Zimmer as well as another defensive tackle, only with 20 so tackles, not really getting involved. So defensive tackle again, not brilliant. Dalvin Tomlinson from the Giants is a good shout. Great run stopper, so I think get a defensive tackle. I wouldn't say draft because you've already drafted Ed Oliver. So yeah, that's the defensive line. Now moving on to the linebacker core, which I think is one of the best in the AFC at least. Like very underrated. I think Tremaine Edmonds, the main general of that linebacker core, I think finished top 5 in tackles, which is great to see. Also drafted in the top 10 a couple of years ago, the 2018 draft. Was it 20? It was 2018. Yeah, sorry, I don't know why I thought that. But yeah, great talent. Really gets involved. Great reads. That's why he's got so many tackles. Doesn't really let many people go. Got great speed as well. Great athleticism. Overall, very solid linebacker. Next to him, Matt Milano also had 100 plus tackles. Again, great talent. I believe he's a free agent, and I think he said he's going to test free agency unless he gets that big contract from the Bills. I don't see them doing because they've already got a guy like Tremaine Edmonds they're going to want to pay, and obviously Josh Allen has got to get paid soon. They've got to free up some space. So I won't be surprised if they move along, but again, great talent. And then next to him would be AJ Klein. Was showing a lot of presence and talent in the start of the year, but I believe he's a free agent as well. So again, a linebacker in the draft could be a shout, or in free agency, but again, don't want to spend too big. So pretty solid right as of now, but again, we've got to see kind of how free agency pans out and if they sign anyone. So to see, the updates on this linebacker core, because some people could leave, but again, as of now, very solid. Now moving on to the cornerback core, which is a little bit iffy, it's bittersweet. You'll get what I mean when I tell you that they have Tre'Davious White as their cornerback 1. I argue he's one of the best players on the whole team. Best player on the defense, no doubt, in my mind. Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde, the safeties. I guess I'll just mention them now in the just call it a secondary bit. Both of them great. I think they're both elite. Jordan Poyer kind of did overshadow Micah Hyde again this year. Both very underrated in my opinion, and kind of makes that secondary click, I guess. Because I said Tre'Davious White is our only proper corner that's, I guess, solid. Levi Wallace is okay. Again, doesn't have a lot of impact, and then Teron Johnson, only really known for that pick 6 against the Ravens in the playoffs, which was, again, a brilliant play. Sealed the game for the Bills. But yeah, I think, again, a bit of improvement. I look to the second round possibly, or one in free agent, as I said in another video. A lot of veteran corners are available, like Richard Sherman and Patrick Peterson. I'd possibly take a chance on one of them, because they're going to want to go to a contender like the Bills. So look out in free agency for a cornerback to sign for them. But, Tre'Davious White is there. Give him someone else, and they'll be a great cornerback core. So, moving on to who I think you lot will take in the draft. Now, I would go offensive line, but with my mock draft, there was no real offensive guys, available or guess at the right value for the pick they were at. So, in the first round, I've gone for Jalen Phillips, a defensive end out of Miami. He's a bit outshone by his counterpart at Miami in Gregory Rousseau, who will most likely be taken further on in the NFL draft, around the probably top 10, top 15 pick. So, a great pick. I think he's fairly raw, got all the athleticism though. And again, going under veterans like Mario Addison would be great for his growth, I think. Moving on to the second round with the 60th pick, I have you guys actually taking a cornerback in Greg Newsome from Northwestern. Now, I was thinking he's kind of more of a third round pick. It's a bit of a stretch, but again, with who was available at the time, I think, cornerback was the biggest need. And again, kind of cornerback's such a valuable position. So if you take into account positional value, that kind of would up his rank a little bit. But again, great cornerback, around 6th or 7th, probably for most people in the draft, which is pretty solid. And I think second round pick, not bad. Then we got third pick, which is as far as I've gone with my mock draft right now. I've gone with Chaz Surratt at linebacker, one of my favourite prospects in this draft. My God, his story, if you guys didn't know, he came into college football at UNC as a quarterback, got injured, and actually switched to linebacker, which is quite an odd switch. But again, he had, the speed, he had the athleticism. And it's just ridiculous how quickly he's became such a great linebacker, a great athlete in 2 years. I mean, I've watched him. Just his sheer speed kind of, gives him an edge over, he gets to those holes quite quickly. And I think that's kind of what you need as a linebacker. As long as you get to them open holes, as long as you're a consistent tackler, which he's got a little bit of concerns, as obviously he's quite inexperienced at the position. But again, he's very raw. But, you can definitely fix that. The Bills have got a great coaching system, so I'm very looking forward to see what he can do. Hopefully the Bills get him. I think especially if Matt Milano leaves, that's a great replacement. So yeah, that's about my mock draft for now for the Bills. Alright then, so that about wraps up my Bills recap. Thanks a lot for watching, guys. Let me know if you want to see any more teams, any more content on this channel. And that's about it. I'll see you later.